months into pre-con, and we're ready to start construction. So we're trying to get approval and permitting of 100% construction documents, and that's with the city and the Oshpod plan checkers right now. Approval of the schedule, we need to get that from the owner. Contractual obligation, we need to get the particular final completion, substantial completion dates that he approves of, he or she. And we're also completing our buyout. We're almost at 100% buyout, and that ties into our contingency selection for our buyout in the future. So now that you guys have kind of idea where we're at in the pre-con phase, let's go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what we're going to be talking about today that wasn't included in these items. I'm going to give you guys a project overview, going to go through some of the milestones and critical path in the schedule, a site logistics and safety plan, quality control and mock-up, cost overview, and then a big picture. All right, so core and shell, everything's there for us to jump in, do a structural upgrade on the basement levels 1 through 4, as well as the roof, and then jump in with our interior build out and MEPs. That's what we have right now. It's not what we're typically used to. It's not a project type we've recently done, but because of the particular location and the sort of the well-being of the owner and the area that these healthcare providers are trying to invest into, we want to get installed in this area and get with these owners. So core and shell. So this is just an interior layout of what the building is going to look like. There's going to be various medical facilities. This is Oshpod 2.1, which implies that it has nursing facilities, primarily the ambulatory emergency center. And then the remaining portion is Oshpod 3, which is your clinics and exam rooms and all that. So the building's interior build out is obviously going to be very nice. A lot of beautiful finishes. We're really going to give the owner a good one so that we maintain our reputation, and when future healthcare providers are in this area, they're going to know who to come for MOBs. Now that you've had a little quick project overview, you know what the project is going to look like. I want to go straight into our project schedule, give you our durations, give you our milestones and our critical path, and I'll hand it over to Ethan Martinez for that.
Thank you. I'm going to start by going over the overall schedule of the project. We started the project March 14th of 2016. This gives us 21 months total to get to our substantial completion for the project. We have split this project up into 3 phases. The first phase is the design phase. We allow that for 9 months. Then we go into the construction phase for 12 months. Finally, the post-construction phase for 2 months. In the 9 months of design phase, we include the design development and permitting. We go into bid packages, buying out our subcontractors. We get our submittals from all of our subcontractors, and we go get our procurement for our early structural steel and concrete work. Once we get our notice to proceed to begin construction, we move on with the mobilization onto the site, setting up trailers, fences. Then we move on to the structural upgrades of the house, of the structure, making sure that it is earthquake proof and suitable for a medical facility. Once we're done with the structural upgrades, we move on to the framing and rough-in, and then finally the equipment installation and site finishes. Also included in the construction phase is our preliminary punch walk, and finally a temporary certificate of occupation from the state fire marshal. Because we begin this project in December, Emeryville has a lot of heavy rain this time of year, so we've allowed 5 weeks weather allowance to compensate to avoid any sort of project discrepancies. Also, after we get substantial completion, we begin the 2-month post-construction process. That includes stuff like our final punch lists, final commissioning, owner training, and finally closeout in time for our final completion date of February 2018. Now I want to talk about the critical path. The first step in our critical path is going to be our design development phase. About 3 months into the design development phase, we start with our construction drawings. The construction drawings are split up into 4 design packages. The first one being for the structural steel and concrete work. Once we finish that design package, we move on to making a bid package for it and buying out our subcontractors. Once we buy out our subcontractors, we get submittals from those subcontractors, and finally we get procurement of the materials onto the site. Once we get our NTP for the beginning of the construction, we go on to begin with the structural upgrades for the site. Once we completely finish the structural upgrades, we move on to the framing and rough-in and the equipment and system installation, a sort of rolling construction going up from floor to floor. And finally, the finishes. The punch list is also included in this construction phase that leads us into our final commissioning and owner training for our post-construction phase. I will now hand it off to our superintendent, Vache.
Thank you, Ethan. This is a corn shell building, so we don't have the luxury of space. It's a very small footprint. The building is very large on the property itself, so we have to be very efficient and utilize the little bit of space that we do have. Now, with this building, the owner, it's going to be a build out for a medical facility, and with that comes a lot of heavy medical equipment. So we're going to have to do a lot of structural steel upgrades in order to accommodate our medical equipment, especially the MRI machine, CT scan machine, and our tables and equipment in our operating rooms. We've decided to utilize the underground parking. Now we have dumpsters here. That's the area where we are going to stage the dumpsters when the driver comes to do his swap outs. Instead of having to pick it up, go to the transfer station, come back, he could just switch it out on site and save him and save us time. And we don't have the luxury of having, a bunch of dumpsters on site, so we figured that would really help. Our muster point is going to be at the south point, at the southernmost point of the building by the restaurant. We're going to have our man and material hoist set up in between grid lines 6 and 7. Now we decided to go with a material hoist and man lift because of the length of the steel studs. They're 14 feet, 6-inch high walls, and with that our elevator, the utility elevator, cannot accommodate that. And in order to get this man lift and material hoist in place, we're going to have to remove a section of the exterior precast wall. And that's going to entail cutting out the concrete, removing the glazing, keeping it, and then putting it back in later. That's going to be done on floors 2, 3, and 4. Porta potties, wash facilities, and non-unit gate are set up at the northwest corner of the property. Now moving into our plan to get these large, heavy MRI and CT scan machines into the building. Where the blue line is, that is where the exterior portion of the wall is going to be removed. We're going to utilize a 100-ton crane to lift it because the MRI machine itself is very heavy, especially the magnet portion of it. It's just over 13,000 pounds. And we have decided to keep one of the partition walls, the lead partition wall, out for the time being to get the machine in, and we'll have to remobilize the crew to get that installed. With the CT scan machine, we decided to remove a second wall, or leave out a second wall, leading into the corridor, which is roughly 17 feet wide, which will accommodate the width of the CT machine and all equipment going to the OR. Our crane, at about 125 feet reach, it will safely hold, it'll hoist 36,200 pounds, and that is above the 75% critical lift limit, so we will have to implement a critical lift plan. We will implement a quarantined off swing radius and lift area. Material laid down will be right in front of it. Tractor trailer will pull up with the HVAC equipment and the MRI and CT when it's scheduled, hoist it safely, put it in place. At Hansel Phelps, safety is our number one concern. We pride ourselves in having the lowest EMR rating, or one of the lowest EMR ratings in the industry, and that's not by accident. I'm just going to go over some of the key unique safety items we're going to have to pay close attention to. Like I mentioned, we will be utilizing a crane, and with the critical lift plan, we will implement a safety officer on site for that day and the days of any of the CT and MRI scans. We will have 2 weeks to review the critical lift plan. We will go over the weights of the rigging equipment, how often they'll stop, their checkpoints, their stop points to check their gauges, make sure they're still in equilibrium and they're not in danger of tipping over or losing the load. All right, I'm gonna hand it off to Loai, whoever the quality control.
Thank you, Vache. So as the quality control engineer on this healthcare structure, my number one priority is to develop and maintain a quality control plan that adheres to the OSHPAT specifications. This is classified as a healthcare structure, and the owner would like to maintain that classification. He'd like to include as many medical equipment in the building, as long as it doesn't reach OSHPAT 1, which is a hospital classification. And that reason is we don't want OSHPAT to be regulating this project more than they have to. And that way we can expedite the construction process and hand over the building to the owner as soon as possible. We have a checklist from OSHPAT. They take into consideration the CBC, and this will help us eliminate any oversight and carry on efficiently. It is particularly important to adhere to the specifications in the contract, as they are heavily influenced by OSHPAT. The owner has requested a mock-up of a full physical mock-up of the operating room and 4 exam rooms. We have suggested doing a 3D mock-up, as it's faster to do, it's easier to change things, you can get a full visual, and it can show a lot more features. If the owner is still not satisfied with this, we will go and do a full physical mock-up, as we don't shy away from mock-ups here at Hansel Phelps. But we will have to take it into consideration, as we will have to account for the cost. Let's go over that cost, our estimated premium.
Thank you, Loai. So we also try to accommodate every need that our client needs, especially when it comes to different changes in the cost as well. In this case, the client wanted a different wall partition layout, so we went ahead to do an estimate for that part. So the overall estimate wall cost was $1.7 million, and it's broken up here into different levels, level 1 to 4, and level 2 being the highest cost level. So right here is a takeoff of section D, level 2. There's a different layout that the owner requested, and these walls range from 0 non-rated walls to 2-hour rated walls. So now that we went over the estimate, we're going to go over the bid flow summary, which our project manager John Ambicki is going to go through.
Thank you, Jimmy. So we all know. Don't worry about that. We all know for when it comes to subcontractors, it's always that 10% that usually takes about 90% of our time. So what we wanted to do, and make sure that we do on all projects, is we want to make sure that we not only pick the lowest, but the most responsible and most reliable bid. In order to ensure that, we have a list of pre-qualifications that we give for every bid invitation. And I just wanted to go over a quick few points that we're going to look at specifically for this project. First, we want to take a look at their current and future workflow. The reason for this, we want to make sure they can handle the project and that they don't overwork themselves. Second, continuing off of that, recommendations. We're going to look at their current jobs, see if we can contact their recommendation, that they gave to us, and they want to make sure that, see how they are to work with and get a good idea before we decide to choose them. Next, we want to, for this project, we require a $50,000 minimum, or bond rate at a $50,000 price, that's the price of their bid. So we took that into consideration. Also, we had a 90-day hold. We want them to have a 90-day hold on their proposals. And like Vache said, safety is important to us, so we want to make sure they have a good EMR rating. Okay. So first, acoustical ceilings, we decided to go with add-in. The reason for this is they were the lowest price, and they also covered all of the work we wanted them to complete. Unfortunately, we were underneath our budget price, but we still think that they will complete the work efficiently and effectively and get the quality that we desire. So for building specialties, we decided to go with do-it-all metal products. They were not the lowest. The reason for this, we chose them over Nothing So Special is because after speaking with them, there was really nothing so special about them. And like I said before, we want to make sure they're not only the lowest, but they're they can do the job right and how we want it to get done. And we still saved about $270,000 on this. Next. For metal supports, we decided to go with Trust the Strut. The reason for this is they had everything we required, and they had a good bond rate versus Mohs Metals that was the lowest. And Mohs Metals also did not include their 3D modeling that we required. So we took that into consideration, and we ended up still being under our budget price and saving about $116,000. And for RF shielding, we decided to go with RF LLC. Sorry, it's not up there, but we decided to go with them because for this type of job, we wanted to make sure they had that 90-day gap, or the 90-day to just make sure we got everything and we understand that, or we have everything organized and that it works out. So, but unfortunately for this, we weren't at our budget price, and we did take a loss. But for this project, we want to make sure that this part of the job is done correctly. And after that, I'm going to pass it over to Kasra to go over the final summary.
Thanks, John. So we have our general condition breakdown here. That's our indirect construction costs. Mainly it's supervision, engineering, and survey work. Total comes out to about $2,900,000. That's $100,000 lower than what we had in our design development budget. And when we add in these general condition costs to the rest of our costs, we get a purchased amount of about $41,811,000 and some change. Notice that this does have a total savings of approximately $1.75 million. Main reason for this is because of some of the savings we had buying out particular subcontractors, and it will vary a little bit, and that's why we have a contingency for our buyout at approximately 1.75%. Now that may seem a little bit low to you, but considering the fact that our buyout is almost over 90% complete, we don't see much risk left over there, and so 1.75 is reasonable. In terms of profit margin, we went with 4%. We felt that the cost of the project being at around 42, this was a reasonable number. Today's standard market for this type of job, I believe, would be around 4 to 6, but considering we're jumping into construction, we wanted to make sure to stay competitive with any other design build team that was considering trying to bid this out. Then we have our main important contingency at 4%. This is an OSHPD job. It is design build. It is something that we haven't recently done before, and it is also one of the first times we want to make an impression on this owner. So to have that contingency of 4%, about $1 million and some change, is reasonable. So those are our key costs. Then we have our, please. Then we wanted to give you guys a big picture. So one, some of the biggest risks, and moving forward, what we're aiming to get. OSHPD 2.1 and 3. Yes, it's not a hospital. There's still clean rooms. There's still very big inspections. There's still possibility and risk involved in change orders that could occur. Meeting the owner's requirements. The owner's already been asking us for physical mock-ups. He's asking us for a change order to go and build 9 months worth of extra offices in a nearby space. The owner seems to be asking for a lot, and so we believe that that is a particular risk in terms of the owner's willingness to change around the original schedule of the project. Then we have the schedule, of course, 23 months approximately. We have to get it done on time. There's no question absolutely about that. And then this isn't typical of our recent projects. moving forward, it seems like there's a lot of healthcare providers that want to come here and invest in this particular neighborhood. We have to showcase our work in this community and get involved, and then, of course, develop a repeat client in a lucrative market. With that, I open the floor for questions.
Okay, we got 10 minutes.
Good work getting to this point, getting everything done yesterday and turned in. I know we asked a lot of you, and it is a big effort to get it all together, but good job. So, a couple follow-up questions. We'll get started. I liked your presentation on your fee and contingency. I think that makes a lot of sense. Tell me, why did you pick 4% for the construction contingency?
The construction contingency is 4%. I felt that was a reasonable amount given the fact that this is Oshkosh. So if an inspector comes on site and he says he doesn't like the way that a certain wall was built out, inspected and matched, he's gonna be very strict about it, and he's gonna have us pull out that entire wall and put it back in. So I felt that with that, the fact that it's design build and we haven't even started construction yet, that a 4% construction contingency on a $42 million job was very reasonable.
To add on to that too, the owner was really, he was already quite a lot of changes too. Like for example, the wall layout, he really wanted a new wall layout. So he was like the type of owner that required a lot of changes. So in the future, maybe require more. And I think with contingency of 4%, that would be this plan. Yeah.
In addition, we don't really have much space on site, and we're performing these sort of strange, pull out this precast panel instead of a material hoist in this area, bringing in the equipment. There's a lot of risk involved with some of the high quality, expensive materials in this building, and in case anything gets damaged, we want to have that contingency there.
No, I think you're right. I'm going in and modifying the building and trying to repurpose it essentially. Good, Mr. Hale.
Very good job with the schedule. I see you looking like, what's his brother gonna say? It's good. It's a good job. It's a really good job. You got good activities. So I just have a couple questions about some certain activities. That's all. Under your mobilizations, you have an item in there. I'm sure Brandon will ask about it. But you have on your first level, you build out your temp offices.
Yes.
All right. But I didn't see an activity for removing those temp offices.
That
When's
was,
your, I was gonna ask, so when do you plan on getting rid of that in your schedule?
that was,
We utilized the space efficiently, like I mentioned, because we decided, it would be better to have the construction offices on the first floor in the part of the building where it wouldn't require, we don't have any expensive equipment or any delicate items going in. And we figured we would leave it there and utilize that space until, I think it was 2 months before, turning it over to the owner.
So after you did that, you probably have to do any activities after that too?
Right, come in and
Right.
remobilize, your framer, your drywaller, and there's 2 bathrooms in there for the employees, 2 showers also, so that'll be built up.
All right. One more item. So on your punch list, your punch list setting here, after you do your architect and engineer back check walks, you go through every single floor, which is good. You have a few days for that, but then you have an owner punch walk, which is 10 days, but you don't have any activities after that.
the owner punch walk, ideally, the architect engineer would have caught most of the things in the owner punch walk. The owner punch walk was mainly to make sure that the owner was fine with the building guys and we could turn it over to him. Yeah.
What if they're not fine?
We would have to schedule more time for a.
I think you had some days in there anyway, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always good to put that in there because you know what? You have that one day before final completion.
That's gonna be a busy day.
It's gonna be a busy day. That's good. I see what you're doing. In most cases, you hope that architect engineers, most time they're on our side, hopefully, so you never know what the owner's gonna say. So you wanna build in a little bit of play for you to have to go back and do some back, especially bring them back for a back check. But you guys did a good job on this. Really good.
Alright, I know you guys chose RF LLC for your RF shielding. And one of the main reasons in your review was that it was 90 days that they held their bid for. What were some of the other risks that you saw associated with the 60-day hold that you couldn't maybe work out, seeing the 90-day?
Well, the reason that I I did that was just because of the type of project that it is and the type of work. I wanted to make sure that everything was covered in terms of all the different, or making sure that we checked everything and that we weren't missing anything when we looked through the proposals.
Would you be worried about material fluctuation at all in costs from the 60 to the 90? Or could you work something out with like a subcontractor to hold that?
I mean, I really want to stick by just for that one, just for this project. Keep that 90 days for that one.
Okay, and then one more. I know you guys mentioned it earlier, but you didn't quite specify. The 3D mock-up, if it didn't work in the model and you had to build it, where would that money come from?
We wouldn't build a full physical mock-up because we don't see it beneficial. We'd do part of it, maybe an exam room, and include all the features in that room, and where
That
we.
still costs money, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, at best guess, where would you pull that
To
from?
answer your question, since it's a mock-up, that it's in the best interest of us and our client to develop that mock-up. So for us to take the hit on that cost, it's not a bad cost, it's an investment. So we would take the hit on it.
Thank you.
Alright guys, so overall great job on the estimate. Specifically part A, looks like you guys captured all the many different partition types that were listed on the sheets. So I had one question regarding part B of the estimate, specifically the time impact analysis. So it mentions in here that hanging drywall in these restrooms should take approximately 5 days. So I just wanted to clarify, does that also include the cost for the demolition of the existing non-rated walls, as well as the time for the demolition, or is that strictly just hanging?
That's included the demolition and the cost of the hanging of the drywall. I talked to my scheduler with this, and he said it's approximately, I think, to like 30 days for the overall finish in one floor. So that's all the finish. That's not the drywall. So I feel like if there's only like 34 restrooms total, I believe, and 10 an average of like 10 restrooms in each floor. So you're talking about just a little restroom, drywall, just demo that out. It shouldn't be taking that long. Just 5 days total demo and the hanging of the drywall as well. And for a $12,000 difference with the 1 hour rated walls, I think it's a good investment for the owner as well.
Thank you.
All right, well, for your staffing matrix, I thought you guys did a good job. We were pretty close. As far as the estimate was concerned, the GC estimate, the one question I have is related to one of the two things that you need to build a construction project, because there's really only two things. You need dumpsters and bathrooms. You're not carrying any cost for bathrooms, so what's your bathroom plan?
Laboratories, we're gonna have porta potties set up on the northwest corner of the project inside our perimeter fence.
And what are you gonna do to pay for that, because you're not carrying the cost right now?
If we were to go with either office inside the actual first floor, or whether we were to select an office space outside, then the bathrooms would be included there. And that was one thing that we were considering, is instead of setting up on that floor and having to come back and do that work again, select a nearby office space that would already include some of the costs for those things, and it would be.
Sure, and that covers the bathrooms for the temp offices, right? But what about the bathrooms for the craft?
Bathrooms for the crowd. There wasn't that much space on site.
That would be an incurred cost that unfortunately was overlooked.
It's an investment, like the mock. You gotta look.
Site U, that was a really good presentation. As an executive, you probably would have blown my socks off. It's really cool. Just want to know how, so that plan needs to be communicated to the craft when they come on site. New craft, orient them on site, figure out where stuff is, where you figure out where you want to place your restrooms, where the dumpsters are, et cetera, et cetera. How are you going to communicate that plan that you showed us to the craft?
We'll utilize a pre-construction meeting with each trade, and then we'll have our 6-week look aheads, 4-week look aheads. We'll have our foreman's meetings once a week, so that way they can relay any discrepancies and or any trades that may be working on top of each other and help mitigate any of that bottleneck that may occur. But we'll be in communication with them numerous times leading up to the job, and them showing up on site, and then throughout the project also.
Often when you carry out that meeting, say stuff's been here a while, like your framer, and you're bringing new people on, what?
We'll require once a week meeting with the foreman.
Okay.
And then we'll have a weekly work plan submitted to us, we'll review it, and then we'll go over it together with all the foremen, so all the foremen themselves know who's gonna be working where and what they're working on, and they can relay that to their crew.
Okay. And you said you're gonna remove the skin for obviously a couple reasons, to get the MRI and CT in, get the studs in, get the material hoist in. Where are you gonna store that skin?
We would store it in the basement, the parking structure, set up a temporary wood structure or something enclosed to make sure it doesn't get damaged, transported there safely until it's ready to go back in.
All right, that's time. All right, guys.